The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. On this show, we talk about many aspects of life in the Bronx, and we would be remiss if periodically we didn't take a close look at the burgeoning artist community in the Bronx. In fact, while the Bronx has had legendary artists and musicians for generations, maybe more than ever right now, Bronx artists are claiming their own spaces and fueling our identity and culture as never before. So tonight, an interlude from our usual dialogue about government and politics and housing and education and healthcare and economy. We'll take a look at as equally important an aspect of life in the Bronx, Bronx arts and artists. Feel free to check in with your point of view by calling 718-960-7241, or you can email your questions or comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. But for right now, please join me in welcoming from Bronx Art Space, Linda Cunningham. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Great to have you. And now showing at the Longwood Arts Gallery and other places, Xavier Figueroa. Good evening, Xavier. Thank you for joining us. Linda, let's start with you. Tell me about this notion that maybe we're doing better or more or different in the Bronx as far as arts than we ever have before.
Well, yes. Actually,
it's true.
It's true. It is really true. And in fact, Bronx Art Space, it's been going for about 4 years now, all of a sudden had an opening on Wednesday night, and I think there were 350 people there. And I was like, didn't know what to do. I was like, very busy.
You were thrilled?
Very busy, yes. And actually, something that had to do with it, I brought some things here because a group came to the Bronx who has been putting on exhibitions in spaces that have been left empty and aren't being used productively. And they, encouraged by the Bronx Museum of Arts, they took on hosting a big exhibition in this building that's called the Andrew Friedman House.
Now
it's
you
enormous.
Brought me a flyer here.
Flyer
this is the
here.
Friedman
That
House.
is from 1975. One of the last times that it was functioning as an amazing retirement home for, it was a retirement home. It takes up a whole city block, and it looks like a Renaissance palace.
So now the address is 1125 Grand Concourse. What street is that?
Right, it's between 165 and 167.
And so that's where your show is going?
That's where the show is that I'm in. I have a large installation, but mind you, this is a huge building, and there are a lot of installations.
In addition to Bronx Art Space, for now you're in this show. We're going to show some incredible pieces of work and all different things, so don't go away.
Right.
Why do you think it's happening now, and you say, well, I've had this space for 4 years, whereas maybe 6 years ago or 8 years ago, it would not have been successful?
Well, partly, one thing happens that's as important and big and ever as this. This group, it's called No Longer Empty, and they put on these exhibitions in spaces like this one. And so they came here and then went around and met Bronx artists, also started working with a group that had recently been formed of all the arts organizations called the Bronx Alliance for the Arts, so that all of a sudden all of the various Bronx arts organizations have started to collaborate and exchange information, share contacts, to know what each other's programs are going on. And this group has gotten so much energy going, partly. And then they even have produced
Show me,
a
they put out
map.
a Bronx Arts map.
This group produced
Now, what
this
is the
map.
name of the group?
It's called No Longer Empty.
No Longer Empty.
NoLongerEmpty.com.
So really the word that comes to my mind is community.
Community.
They're building a community.
They helped build a
Before we get
community.
to Xavier, one last question, and that is, of the 350 people, are these people coming from Soho up to the Bronx, or do you have a sense that these are Bronxites enjoying their own?
It was a huge mix.
Really?
Yeah, it was a huge mix. All of the artists in that show, well, there's some of them that came from other parts of Manhattan and Brooklyn and whatever. They're people I know, good artists here and there. A lot of them were Bronx artists. Many of them were.
Right.
It also because the Bronx Council on the Arts runs this trolley, and then people feel a little more safe.
It was one of the questions
that.
when Xavier's sitting here, and I know he's got stuff to say about the same things.
Yeah,
I'm asking.
he has other things to say.
But the trolley, has the trolley been helpful in this? I know when it started, it took a little while. It was like pulling teeth to get people on it. But now the Bronx Council is doing well with it, and now that something's happening, it's like working.
It's also that something's happening. So it's a combination of a lot of different things, and Xavier's role in it is also very important.
She did my work for me in
Yes,
the
right.
conversation. Xavier,
Right.
so same line of questioning for you. From your perspective, I'm assuming this helps. Why is this really a good, fertile time, a renaissance period, if you will, for Bronx arts?
I've always felt that the scene was there, but I think in the last couple of years, not just No Longer Empty, and also the gallery owners creating a community. But for the last 2 years, all the artists in the Bronx have started forming groups and also sharing information with each other. I have a magazine online that I try and help also promote everything. I tweet it, I Facebook it, whatever. Everybody's trying to organize. And I think
Here
before
is that magazine, by the way,
yes,
for people who want to
it's
see it.
Bronx Art Guide, right?
Right.
Before, I think artists were trying to do their own thing. Some of them were trying to create groups, but it wasn't like the way it is in the last year. In the last year, we've actually had meetings, just like the gallerists have.
I want to ask about the space. Now, everybody knows what's been going on in the southernmost portion of the borough, and there's always been these lofts and these spaces
Right.
and things like that. I'm guessing the availability of those spaces, the fact that it started slowly but surely to get this reputation. Gee whiz, if you can't afford to live in Soho, you may as well come up here because there's space for you to do your thing and create this community. I'm guessing that's also part of this energy.
I would say that's a small part, actually.
Small part.
Because the truth is, a lot of artists from the Bronx that lived in those areas got booted out by the rent hikes.
That was going to be my next question.
As soon as
is
the artists started
victims
living
of
there.
their own success.
Exactly. That is exactly what
Exactly.
happened.
It happened.
But, they're all fighting tooth and nail to stay, so. And the difference now is that it's not just situated in the South Bronx. Artists in the community, we don't consider it just Mott Haven or Port Morris. We consider the community the entire Bronx.
I initially was like rooting for Linda's answer to be, gee whiz, I hope a large percentage of the 350 are from the Bronx. But then as I began to think about it, I said, you know what, we're practically better off. We want to bring people from other places so that the sophisticates from elsewhere will say, oh wow, this is a happening borough as far as the arts. And then of course you bring in more, and then it
Right.
brings in more support and more funding and everything else, right?
Right.
I mean, that's
yes.
what we want to do. We want to look at some stuff. We ready?
Sure.
Everybody ready?
Sure.
Jane, let's put some stuff on the screen. I think the first one is some pieces that Linda's familiar with. Now, what is this?
This is the installation that I built in the Princess Ballroom of the Andrew Friedman House. And it's about 20 feet long and 10 feet plus high. And what you're looking at are sheets of like drywall with broken edges, and they are covered with canvas, and the canvas is impregnated with photo images that are transferred in there of the early Bronx from the 20s And then there's a section in the middle that is the Bronx when in the tragic era of the 60s, 70s, 80s.
For a little while. I want to look at that. Keep going. Yeah.
And on the far right,
that first one, the one
there's
we
a lot
just
about
looked at,
this.
the wide shot.
Okay, that's actually the wide shot there. That's
the one I want to look at.
Okay, far left is actually that whole section has to do with the Bronx from the 20s and that era on. There's actually even an earlier photo when there was a riverboat that transferred.
To me, this
people.
is the beauty of art, is that you walk into it, and especially if you've been a Bronxite, there are things that will resonate as far as peeling paint and peeling walls and everything else. And so walking through it, I'm assuming that's what you were.
Actually, it's constructed so it's almost like a metaphoric book. So the pages are opening in each of these sections, and it's a tale of the Bronx.
I love to ask Jane, thank you. I love to ask all of these kind of very obvious questions, but did you build it there? Did you move it to there?
Oh, that's a good one.
How long did it take?
I've been working on that piece since October.
September?
Yeah. I built it in my own studio. I actually got myself a studio, and with a great deal of effort, I have a studio that's big enough to do that. I had to build it so it would disassemble and then be able to be put back together again in that site. So it's pretty cleverly constructed, to tell you the truth.
All right, and we're ready for the next. Now, have we exhausted that one? We're ready for the next. What's next? What do we got next? Who's
this is actually a show. This is Bronx Art Space. This is a space that is in the same building as my studio.
Which is where?
And that's 140th Street between 3rd Avenue and Alexander.
And to me, what is absolutely striking about this, aside from the beauty of the work that's in there, is look at the comparison of what we just saw versus what we're looking at now. If we want to get a sense of, a burgeoning art scene, there's something for everybody's taste in there. So now, whose painting is that on the left?
That's Alexis Mendoza's painting. He's a Bronx resident, long time, a Cuban artist who is also working energetically with organizing a Latino Biennale that they put on, like a sequence of 5 exhibitions that'll happen in the fall. And back in the back is one by an installation by Luis Steffenberg, who is also working with him. So those two guys.
All right, let's get the next one.
You can flip on the next one. Yeah.
Fun with art today.
I think. Okay, that's another part of an exhibition at Bronx Art Space. Tammy Wolfsey does these monumental linoleum cuts. As you can see, that thing is 10 feet high. You could go to the next one.
The doorway looks so small, but when you look at it.
That's right. And this is a photo from the last one, the Saturday night opening. We actually had 2 openings because we brought in about 50 artists and had 2 different openings to try to sell enough artwork to keep Bronx Art Space funded for the next several months.
Now, was this on a trolley night? That's Wednesday night.
That is actually the Saturday night. There were more people there on Wednesday night. I couldn't
just
photograph.
For people who don't do this all the time and who would say, you know what, rather than go downtown, I'd like to stay in the Bronx and see museums or galleries in the Bronx. Do they charge admission?
No,
you just walk through?
Never. Well, we're a not-for-profit. We are like a gallery because we have changing exhibitions. We don't have a collection, and you can walk in. No, even the Bronx Museum has now made itself free.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So they really want the community to be able to enjoy these resources. Something doesn't have to cost money.
And the Bronx Museum has expanded. I mean, it's absolutely spectacular it was always wonderful, but now it's even more wonderful.
And they're even getting a Friday night program going so that there's some event happening every Friday night at the museum now.
Let's do what's next. Jane said maybe we're going to put some of the Xavier stuff up there. Let's take a look. What do we got?
Okay.
Now this I was looking at this before, and I didn't even want to look too closely till we got on the air with it. What is this? This is extraordinary.
I do installation art. Well, I do all types of art, but this is something I've been doing for the last couple of years. This is actually at Bronx Art Space, Linda's spot. I did a piece called 1,000 Times Goodnight, which is the first part of a series of installations called The Relationship. So you're basically seeing the moment just before Romeo and Juliet fall in love.
It's funny you say Romeo and Juliet. I'm thinking Tony and Maria, which it's pretty much the same thing.
And when you move, this is where their passion ignites.
Well, wait, when you move?
Yes.
Well, who moves?
When a person passes by the piece, it turns red. So 1,000 Times Goodnight is when Juliet and Romeo, they're talking at the balcony. That's when the reader basically realizes how much passion they have.
Same dumb questions that I asked Linda. How long did it take? I would think you would have had to have built it in this space. Getting the materials, would you go out and you say, I'd like to buy a fire escape? I mean,
No, I actually
how
made...
does one go out
No,
and do
that's
this?
actually made of foam core and some wood. But most of it's foam core. The ladder's made of wood. I made everything by hand.
And the guy?
The figure's made of onion skin paper wrapped around
Like wire?
chicken wire.
Chicken wire,
Yes.
wow.
And that took a couple of months to figure out, and then putting it up took about 8 hours.
That is like some kind of performance art, or what is it called, really?
No, it's installation art.
Installation.
Yeah, it's kind of interactive, but
And so, Linda, for you as the proprietor of Bronx Art Space, do you take something like that and leave it up there for a period of time, or do you
Yeah, the
contract
show
with him,
usually
you shake
stays at
hands?
least 1 month.
A month.
You know, at least a month. So that and we're trying to keep Bronx Art Space open from Wednesday through Saturday. And you know, I've got a lot of young interns now who are helping stay there so that they can watch the art and keep the space open. So this would have been.
I'm smiling because having sat in this seat for so long that, you know, and I've seen so many artists come through, we've done so many of these things. If only they had had interns at that time, if only they had had the opportunities. And so then this really defines what my original theory was, that we really have something going on now.
We have something going on. A lot of us have thrown a lot of energy out. I mean, what Xavier's doing with that online magazine, I was really surprised.
Let's
My goodness.
what is the link to that again?
that's BronxArtGuide.com.
BronxArtGuide.com. Jane, let's put up some more stuff. We have more. I mean, it's never ending. Okay, no, this
This is part 2 of that
Oh, my
series,
goodness.
The Relationship. This one's called Reservations Not Necessary. And again, the figures are made of paper. The figure that you saw in the first piece from the fire escape is actually the same figure on the left there. I recycle my work so that they all become memories.
What is absolutely beautiful about this, and for me, and I'm assuming for our Bronx viewers, this is a Bronx scene.
It is.
There's nobody in the Bronx who doesn't understand what this is about. And when, you know, I hate to say we've been neglected for all these years, but now we're being interpreted and we're being exposed in this way. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Those photos, some of Xavier's photos of his installations are still on sale in our art fundraiser at Bronx Art Space.
This is
So-
that was a wonderful. Keep going, Jane. I'm
Okay.
having a great time.
Okay.
Let's see some more stuff. Now I saw this before the show and I was absolutely in love with it. And again, is there anybody from the Bronx that doesn't recognize this immediately?
So all 3 of these pieces, by the way, they're based on literature. So the first one was Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare, and the second one was based on a poem. This one's based on a novel by, what's his name? Thornton Wilder.
Okay.
So I did this piece because I'm sorry, the first and second, it's a story. So the first one is where they meet, the second one is when they're in love, and this is where they might part ways.
I was about to say they go running
Right?
and chasing each other
So you have
down
a-
the subway.
Yeah, so you have a subway station scene, and the lights are half red, which means you may or may not be able to enter. And on this image here, on the billboard, is the couple that's possibly breaking up. She's crying already, and he's trying to
goodness
console her.
gracious.
So we don't know where it's going to go.
Depicting our lives is so important and is it just is for a culture. I mean, it's like, you know, the poem on the underground wall, if it were. I mean, this is where people literally tell their stories, and those of us who grew up in the Bronx and live and work in the Bronx, we know, and have relationships in the Bronx, we know what that's like. Could we put that subway back up there? I just love that entranceway. And
the boy in the picture is actually my son.
You constructed this is also wooden kind of thing?
Everything.
Or you didn't like call Mr. MTA, could I borrow an entranceway?
No. It was odd because when I was actually looking for a subway station, when I made the proposal for Gordon Park's gallery, actually this was for the Bronx Latin American Biennial 2 years ago, and the gentleman that was running the show he asked me what the size was. It was originally going to be 14 feet long, but then I found an actual subway station that was that size. It was 9 feet, so I built the whole thing out of plywood except for the handles, which are PVC pipes, and the globes. And
how long?
That took 3 months, I think.
And did you go out and measure entranceways?
I took pictures. I measured.
Do we have more? Let's show some more stuff. Whatever it is, I'm so greedy.
Oh, that's the current show.
Oh, we're going back to the
we're
Bronx Art Space.
Flipping around here. What do we got?
And these are some paintings by Andre Trenier, also a Bronx resident.
Can we eliminate our logo as much as I love that BronxTalk logo? There we go.
Yeah. Okay. And he's painting images from his life. And he was one of the painters that we were showing in the Bronx fundraiser. Those are still at the gallery, still for sale until, you know, the artist runs and takes them out.
How are sales? Do people buy stuff, and is that part of it?
Unfortunately, mostly fairly low-priced items, and mostly people like to buy work that artists that they know and meet. So
well, that would make sense.
When, you know, getting a public there is really important.
What about earning a living for artists in the Bronx?
Boy,
dreadful?
Everybody, well,
they're both
it's
giggling
not
away.
different anywhere in Manhattan, Brooklyn, wherever. It's very, very difficult. Most artists have to have another job, and you know, I had another job for a long time, which really kept me going. At this point, I can be a full-time artist, but that's only because I, you know, had a full-time job
I'm
for
assuming,
a lot
Xavier,
of many years.
For you, you'd love to sell more, but this is what you do, and so you're just driven to do it, and hopefully it'll ultimately work out. Is that how you view it?
I have this conversation with so many artists all the time.
I'm sure you do.
It's not about the money for us, at least not for the Bronx artists that I know. We do want to make a living just doing art, and we just want to live that life, and that would be amazing. But we know the realities of how difficult it is to sell. And but we are working towards that goal, obviously.
Jane is telling me we have many more pictures and not enough time, so let's put some more stuff up. What is this?
That is a piece that is at Longwood Gallery now, and
which is at Hostos.
At Hostos Community College, and this is the picture you see is actually at Wave Hill because I was part of the Bronx Museum's AIM program last year. I made this piece just for that show, and it's called the Conversation Piece, and it's based on those dipping bird toys that drink water, but I turned it around to make it show two gentlemen wearing plague masks, making believe they're birds, but they're consuming oil.
And this?
That's part of that piece, and it's showing the old way to throw a switch for electricity. It's a double switch, and basically we know that coal or oil fuels electrical currents. That gentleman right there is a Republican, basically, and he's wearing.
I didn't know. I thought this was a non-political show.
No,
I had no
art
idea.
is political, and this piece is political. That bird right there, or that figure, is wearing a tuxedo jacket and hat from 1890, and the jacket actually is from the second president of the Coal and Coke Company from Pennsylvania. The other figure is a Democrat.
Oh,
and he's from the
red and the blue,
he's from the mid 20th century. He's wearing a fedora, and I just wanted to show different eras showing that time.
Do critics come down and review the art?
Yes.
And I mean, to me, this goes back to the question I asked about. We want to get people from other places because that'll bring the hoity-toities from Manhattan to come in and look at our stuff. in plain language.
That's one of the things that this show at the Andrew Friedman House has actually managed to do. They are very, very, very energetic, and there have been people coming from Connecticut, from Manhattan, from everywhere. I've been up there any number of times, and I've helped escort some people through the show, but also Bronx residents, and people stood there on the night of the opening and talked to me about how they lived through the era that I was portraying there in the
we only have a
in the middle
few
of the
precious moments for
installations.
people who are watching us now and saying, wow, I didn't know, or now I'm interested, and these seem fascinating. What a great place to take my kids, expand my horizons. What a wonderful thing to do on a Saturday afternoon. How do you get started? How do you find what's going on, or what would you recommend? Just go to the web, look for Bronx Art Space?
You can look for Bronx Art Space. You can look for the Bronx Council on the Arts. They often are listing a lot of things. You can
The Bronx Museum?
You can go to the Bronx Museum, and you can go right across the street to see This Side of Paradise, which is the name of the exhibition at the Andrew Friedman House. You can
Or you
go
can go to
and-
my website.
Well,
His
the next thing
website.
was for Xavier, same
Yes.
thing. We did put the website up, or we're going to
Yes.
put it up again. Go
The
ahead.
website, bronxartguide.com. I post everybody's stuff on there, so they all know that I'm doing
Oh,
it.
so it's not only your stuff.
No, it's not my
you-
stuff at all.
Oh.
It's Bronx Museum, Longwood Gallery, Bronx Art Space, and other people's galleries that are in their homes too, like LDR Studio Gallery.
Real quick, there it is once again, that magazine that's up there. Xavier, in your mind, do you know what you're going to work on next? Do you have,
Yeah,
is it already
I'm
planned?
already. I was just
Don't
in
ask.
5 shows. Now I'm in 3 more shows coming up.
So what's next? Give me 5 words of what you're working on next.
Salem Artworks upstate. I'm going to be actually the subway station. Your favorite piece is going up there.
Going up there, okay. Well, let
And
them
I'm
get
working on it.
educated. And Linda, for you, what's next?
I'm working on a big installation for an exhibition in Cologne, Germany, of 4 artists from 4 different countries, actually. A Brazilian, an artist from Amsterdam, and
And the
I've
country of
actually
the
helped
Bronx.
organize it. Yes, in the country, of the
Country
Bronx.
of the Bronx. That's
right.
what you'll be representing.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, I
Yeah.
just want to thank you both for doing what you're doing. We talk a lot about the Bronx being independent or nobody paying attention to us. Well, you know what? This would be the best reason for people to pay attention to the Bronx, and they'll get the most out of it. So, Linda Cunningham, we really appreciate it. Xavier Figueroa, we really appreciate
Thank
what
you.
you're doing. Keep going, and you come
Thanks.
back and show us more stuff soon, we hope.
Thanks.
Thank
Real
you.
pleasure.
Folks, if you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our show. Archives of Bronx Talk available at bronxnet.org. You click Bronx Talk on the right-hand navigation bar. Also, please become a fan of Bronx Talk on Facebook. That's right. Now, next Monday night, we'll help an innovative high school program designed to fight AIDS celebrate their 20-year anniversary. I am proud to say I was one of the first journalists to report on this program almost 2 decades ago, so it will be interesting to compare then to now. We'll also show you a news story I did about this program those many years ago. Then on May 21st, a whole different kind of show. We'll have highway experts in to talk about that tragedy on the Bronx River Parkway and what has and has not been done over time to prevent similar incidents. Bronx Talk, every Monday night at 9 on BronxNet, Cablevision 67, Verizon Fios 33. Thank you, of course, to Jane Folloro, our director Michael, and Dina, who did a great job arranging the photos and everything. Our cast of thousands who are all around us, and to them and to you. And